What's up, everybody? We have a lot to cover. I have pages of notes. I couldn't memorize all this. This is just, you know, these Zionists, they keep saying how they're just so appalled by terrorism and violence. Now, I know Jews are. I keep saying this, Zionists and Jews, I don't equate them equally. And, this is going to start showing some of my reasoning for this. But I mean, I grew up around Orthodox Jews, and it's the rabbis that taught me that Zionism does not represent Judaism. So, I've always had that mindset from the get-go, because it's been taught to me by people who should know best. I mean, they're the Jews of the Jews. I don't mean that rudely. I mean that, they're the Jews of the Jews. I mean, it's, I guess in the Christian world, you would say the apostles were the Christians of the Christians, I mean, they just... But, let's talk about, how Zionists treat terrorists. I mean, what do Zionists really think about terrorists? When there's a terrorist in their midst, what do they do? I mean, obviously, you would think, they're going to charge them and they're going to arrest them and they're going to protect people from them, right? Anybody ever heard of the ambassador of South Africa, Landkin? He was an open member of the terrorist organization Irgun. Irgun is part of LMFAO. Irgun and LMFAO, they're called two separate terrorist organizations, but they're kind of more like rivaling siblings. They did break off of Haganah. Haganah is Haganah are the nice guys in this whole story about these terrorists. Yeah, they're really nice, Haganah. Wait till you hear what Haganah did. They're the good guys. Then we have Begin. They made him Prime Minister of Israel. Begin was the leader of Irgun. He's also a prison escapee. Yep. Escaped prison, was the leader of Irgun. I think he was actually the leader of Irgun when they assassinated Bernadotte. Oh, speaking of Bernadotte, what about Shamir? Yeah, another prime minister of Israel. Shamir is actually one of the ones that was also a member of Irgun, and he actually is one of the three people that ordered the assassination of Bernadotte. And the Israeli government has known this almost from the get-go. It was only, I think it was still the same day, the government knew who was responsible for the murder of Bernadotte. They knew who the gunmen were, and they knew who ordered the hit. Yet they never prosecuted them. For those of you that don't know, Bernadotte saved more Jews than any other one single individual in at least the last 150 years. He saved tens of thousands of Jews from the concentration camps. The colonel that was with him when he was murdered, hold on a second here, I have his name here somewhere. The colonel that was with him was Colonel Andre Charot, and he was only sitting with Bernadotte because he wanted to thank Bernadotte for saving his wife from the concentration camps. And he was murdered with Bernadotte. But that's why he was sitting with Bernadotte. He was thanking Bernadotte for saving his wife from the concentration camps. But, two of the people responsible, they make them prime ministers. I've actually talked about Begin in another video. I mean, the 1982 Holocaust in Lebanon. Begin did that. What about Friedman? He created I didn't write that down. What's the name of that party that he created? The fighter group party, or the workers fighters party? It's something fighter or fighter something party. I forgot to write that down. But he was a member of Irgun. He was also the leader of the terrorist group Lahai. Irgun and Lahai, like I said, they're kind of rivaling siblings. But Lahai, I mean, when you put Irgun and Lahai together, I mean, there is absolutely not a single terrorist organization to ever enter the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and spill more blood. The Irgun Lahai terrorist organization has spilt more blood than any other terrorist organization in the whole conflict. I think they've probably spilled more blood than the PLO and Hamas combined. That's including October 7th. It is the most vicious terrorist organization in the whole conflict. I mean, these guys, the Islamic Brotherhood, look at Irgun and Lahai and they're like, yeah, man, look at these guys. I want to be like them. Everybody knows who the Islamic Brotherhood is. I mean, those guys are so crazy, Al-Qaeda wouldn't let them in. And they look up to a group like Irgun and Lahai. I mean, these guys killed more Jews than the PLO for sure. I think they probably killed more Jews than Hamas even. I mean, Lahai and Irgun are not, like I said, they're one of the worst, one of the most vicious terrorist organizations even in all of the Middle East. They're not the worst, but they're one of the worst. They're definitely the worst in the whole conflict between Palestine and Israel. But, Friedman was another one that ordered the murder of Bernadotte. Like I said, he's also the leader of Lahai, while he was also at one point in time a member of Irgun. He was also elected to the Knesset. I forgot how to say that. I wish my friends were here. I wish I was up in New York. I'd be able to ask everybody how to say these things, right? He was elected to the first Knesset. I think I'm saying that right. So, you see the theme here, right? Israel just loves putting terrorists in political power. So, they keep saying how the Zionists, I'm not talking about the regular Israelis. I'm talking about the Zionists. They keep saying how they hate all these terrorists. I'm not seeing it. Ben Zivi, the longest serving president, he personally ordered the murder of a Jewish activist by the name of Jacob Dehan. I've actually talked about that also in another video. Yeah, he didn't like the idea that he was a Jew not supporting Zionism. And he just ordered his murder. Get rid of him. Yeah. These guys love murdering people. I mean, and these are leaders. These aren't, and these aren't even people that have no significance. We're not talking about, the mayor of a kibbutz that nobody even knows the name of. We're not talking about people. These are important people in politics. Zionists love these people. They're all terrorists. Every single one of them is a terrorist. And we can't forget about today's favorite. This guy, it's not known for sure. It's a very good possibility that he is a terrorist member. He is a member of the terrorist group Kach, K-A-C-H. It's not known if he's a member or not, though. He's a sympathizer for sure. He's been found guilty of being a terrorist sympathizer. He's been found guilty of terrorist hate speech. He actually had a mural. Well, it wasn't a mural. It was like this big painting. But I mean, everybody who's ever walked in this guy's living room, they said you couldn't miss this thing. It was the most prominent feature in his whole house. And he had this humongous painting in his living room of Baruch Goldstein. For those of you who don't know who Baruch Goldstein is, he is a terrorist, a known terrorist member of Kach. And he found all these Muslims that backs turned to him, praying. They're just praying. And he murdered 29 of them and injured another 125 of them. Men and children. Just this guy that I'm talking about, that is a terrorist sympathizer, he's also been called by Israelis the fascist Jew. That's the nickname he is given by Israelis. Israelis call him the fascist Jew. For those of you who ain't figured it out yet, I'm talking about Secretary of Defense. That's what he is, right? Secretary of Defense? I think that's what it is. Secretary of Defense Ben-Gvir. Yeah. Oh, and he's using evictions to currently go through the process of ethnic cleansing in Jerusalem. Yeah. I thought about making a list of the massacres that were performed by Haganah, Lehi, and Ergun. But, that would be a book. If I'm going to do that, I might as well write a book, because it's a book. Like I said, the Zionist terrorists in total, the Kach, Haganah, Lehi, and Ergun have I don't think there's any group, even a combination of groups, I know for sure the PLO and Hamas, they haven't killed anywhere near as many people as these Zionist murderers have. I mean, let's just run down a list of the big events. There's actually still a lot more events. These are just the big events. But this represents maybe a quarter to a third of all the terrorist acts committed by these people. And it's probably about a quarter of their body count outside of the massacres. You add the massacres in, man. This is like a tenth of their body count. So, as I mentioned, June 30th, 1924, if we start the list there, that's the murder of Jacob Dahan, murdered by these terrorists. You have a 2-year period from 1937 to 1939. Irgun goes on a killing spree. They just go out, they start murdering men, women, and children all over the countryside. They killed both Jews and Gentiles. Just anybody that they said, if they perceived you as a threat, they just murdered you. If they perceived you as a challenge, they just murdered you. If they thought you could become a threat, they murdered you. They killed at least 250 men, women, and children, all in the acts of terrorism. It was all terrorism. None of this was actually in battle. This was all just terrorist acts by Irgun. In a 2-year span, they just went completely batshit crazy. June 15th, 1938, Irgun planted and detonated a bomb in a vegetable market in Jerusalem, the holy city. There they murdered 29 men, women, and children. July 25th, 1938, Irgun again comes in with a bomb. They find a busy melon market in Jerusalem. They lob this bomb into the market. They murdered 49 men, women, and children. And they didn't see an injury count, so I guess they just killed everybody in there. The bomb was so destructive, everybody in the market died, apparently. There was no report of injuries. If there's injuries, it wasn't giving an injury count. I haven't found anything for an injury count on that. November 6th, 1944, Lahai. They go down to Cairo. They murder British Minister Lord Moyne. Lord Moyne. You would think, since they were killed trying to escape, that Israel would be, we'll just throw their bodies in a grave somewhere. Thank you for, we apologize. This and that. No. Israel, the government welcomes them back with a hero's funeral. Big state-sponsored funeral, treating them like heroes. It gets better. Here in America we have, what's it called? The big cemetery. It's for all our war heroes. It's for actual heroes. Is it Arlington? Is it the Arlington Cemetery? They have a version of that in Israel. It's called Mount Herzl. It's for heroes. The 3 men who assassinated a British minister, they buried them in the cemetery in Mount Herzl. They gave them a hero's burial too. So they gave him a hero's funeral, then they gave him a hero's burial. That's how they treat terrorists. They keep saying they don't like terrorists. They get so upset. Is it that they don't like terrorists, or is it just that they don't like when terrorists act like they do? Because I'm seeing a lot of commonality here between what they've done themselves and what Hamas is doing now. 1946, Lahai sent multiple letter bombs to the British officials, including Foreign Minister Ernst Bevin. Oh, wait, this gets better. You're thinking, yeah, letter bombs to Foreign Minister. How could you top that? They top it. Let me tell you, Zionists love terrorists. They love getting on television and saying how horrible terrorists are, but they love terrorists. July 26, 1946. Like I said, I had to take a lot of notes. July 26, 1946. Irgun bombs the British administrative headquarters at King David Hotel. This is said to be one of the worst bombings in the 20th century. There's only a handful of bombings that are actually worse than this. The Oklahoma bombing is one. 9/11 actually happens in the next century, so it's not the 20th century that 9/11 happens, so that doesn't count for the 20th century. You have the Oklahoma bombing. I don't think the Twin Towers bombing was as bad as the King David. So yeah, definitely the Oklahoma bombing. So, this is the second or third worst bombing in all of the 20th century. The whole 20th century. 1900 to 1999. It's the second or third worst bombing in that whole century. Irgun murdered 91 men and women. There's probably some children in there as well. It injured 45 more. The victims, they were Jewish, British, and Arab. They have no problem killing Jews either. They have a good old time killing Jews. I mean, it's kind of funny, Lahai, they used to have this newspaper. It was called Hamas. You can't make that up. You can look it up. They had a newspaper. It was called Hamas. Wonder who Hamas looks up to. You got to remember also, Hamas, they were funded by the Likud party. The Likud party funded Hamas to make sure that Hamas would cause all kinds of disruptions for Rabin and Arafat. The Likud party is actually born out of Irgun and Lahai. Lahai is actually recognized by Israel as a terrorist organization. Israel has arrested 200 members of Lahai, and I think it's 20 of them have been sent to prison. I think it's 20, maybe. I think it could be more. I'm thinking of the number off the top of my head. I read that somewhere, and it was just something that I glanced past. It wasn't really something I was paying attention to. I think it was 20, though. But, they pretty much funded Hamas all the way up until the election. They still filter money into Hamas. They just don't do it directly anymore. But it's known. There's actually a money trail that can be traced. It's known that money still gets filtered into them from Israel, the government, not the people. The government. Well, the people get forced to do. It's kind of like us. Here in America, we're forced to drop bombs on little babies. We don't want to, but it's what our tax dollars do. 1946, Haganah, Irgun, and Lahai, they all just went on an attacking British railways and airfields. I think that was called the Night of Bridges, actually, I think is what that's from. That's what that's referring to, I think. I believe that's what that was called, the Night of Bridges. October 31st. It's going to keep going. And we still ain't got to the best part, believe me. Actually, I'm going to save that one for the very last. I got to remember to skip over it when I see it. October 31st, 1946. Irgun bombs the British embassy in Rome. Yeah, you know, and I'm still, like I said, I'm going to save the best for last. You know, just keep thinking about this, the things that they're doing. And I have this one that it's just mind fucking blowing. I mean, literally, when I tell you what Lahai did, and we, the United States, is still supporting them. Because like I said, Lahai is now the Likud party, the party of Benjamin Netanyahu. And we still support them when I tell you the absolute worst thing that they did. April 16th, 1947. Irgun bomb fails to detonate at the Colonial Office in London. Wonder how many people would have died there. Office in London, the heart of England. There's this, I'm still trying to, I can't find nothing on this. And it's weird because even Reuters hasn't got anything on this. So I don't understand what exactly happened. But June 14th, 1947, it says Jewish terrorists, which, you know, that could be Irgun or Lahai. Could be a combination of the two. It could be a combination of all three of them. It could be Haganah by itself. I don't know. I don't know what exactly happened. But it just says Jewish terrorists raid Reuters in Tel Aviv. Like I said, I'm trying to dig into that. I can't, and I'm surprised because Reuters doesn't have that. I actually searched Reuters. I figured, well, shit, Reuters would cover this. I can't find nothing. I mean, maybe I did. Maybe I'm just using the wrong search parameters. I'm going to keep searching on that. I'm really curious. June 25th, 1947. 2 Irgun members get sentenced to death. This is during the trials. This is the period, I think, where they arrest 200 Irgun. Actually, no, this might not even be with Lahai. This might be something completely different. I have to look up the date on that. I don't remember the date when they arrested them. I want to say it's actually 78 or 79 where they went and they did all the arrests and declared Lahai a terrorist organization. So yeah, this is something different. June 25th, 1947, 2 Irgun members are sentenced to death. Irgun says, fuck you! They go and they kidnap 2 British soldiers. They kidnap Sergeant Clifford Martin and Sergeant Mervyn Pace. They held them hostage. See all these Zionists. No. Why would people ever take hostages? I mean, they don't think like us. They're not like us. They don't have the same kind of human dignity as us. These are Zionists. They took hostages. They said, we won't release them until you reduce the sentence to something other than death for these 2 members of Irgun. The state executed 2 members. Irgun brutally murdered the men, then hung their bodies in an orange grove and rigged them with explosives. Nobody realized that they were rigged with explosives, so when they cut down the first one, a British officer wound up being wounded. No Zionist would ever imagine hostages. No. Actually, it's not in this list, but the very first skyjacking in history of the world. Not a hijacking. A hijacking, you're on the plane. A skyjacking is where you use planes to bring a plane down. That was committed by Israel. And they held everybody hostage. They released the American because they didn't want America getting involved. But they held all the other people hostage. They wound up eventually releasing them. I think they actually wound up making a trade for a couple criminals that were arrested in another country. I can't even remember what country that was. Was it Iran or was it Syria? But yeah, they took hostages. No Zionist would ever take hostages. They took hostages. I can't remember the name of that, but just Google the very first hijacking in the history of the world. Not hijacking, skyjacking. S-K-Y. Skyjacking. Yeah, the very first one ever that's an actual skyjacking was committed by Israel. And they took hostages. January 6, 1948. Haganah bombs the Semirius Hotel. 24 men and women were murdered. Not sure if there was any children in there. Didn't say anything about children. Definitely 24 men and women were murdered. September 17th, 1948. Talked about that. Lahai murdered Folk Bernadotte and French Colonel André Sarraut. Like I said, the saddest thing about André Sarraut is he was sitting back there with Bernadotte because all he wanted to do was, like I said, this man rescued more Jews than anyone else in the last 200 years. This man is a true Jewish hero. I mean, you're talking, he's the Jewish Superman. And they never, the Zionists just didn't care. The Zionists were like, oh well, just another guy, no big deal, We murder Jews every day. What's a Swiss dude? Don't care. And November 25th, I've actually talked about this before. November 26, 1940, Haganah, 1,800 Jews escaping Nazis. They're escaping Nazis. They get on a ship. They escape Nazis. They're like, yes, we're free. We're free. We're free. 267 men, women, and children were murdered by Haganah because they blew up the ship. Another 172 were injured. And that's still not the best. Oh my God. Our American politicians stand behind the Likud party. The Likud party is built out of the terrorist organization Lahai and Irgun. Lahai and Irgun are the most vicious terrorists ever to enter the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Our politicians support a party that is built out of a terrorist group that tried to assassinate President Truman. I'm not kidding. They tried to assassinate President Truman. 1947, multiple times through 1947, they sent letter bombs to the White House for President Truman. They tried to assassinate President Truman. And in America, our politicians stand behind this organization. The Likud Party is built out of the remnants of the Lahai and Argun Party. This is known. This is not some kind of, oh, well, that's not, that's just rude. This is known. There's no question about it. It is known. It is open public knowledge. They tried to assassinate an American president. And our politicians, both Democrat and Republican, support the Likud Party. Think about that. Our government all the time says, we don't support terrorism. We don't support terror. Actually, that's a bold-faced lie because we support terrorists all over the world. It's, as long as they're convenient for us. I mean, we support the Zionists. The Zionists is just a terrorist movement. Lahai, Haganah, and Argun. They're just terrorists. There's no other word for them. They're terrorists. The IRA was terrorists. ISIS are terrorists. Hamas are terrorists. The whole Zionist government running Israel is built off of terrorism. And we support it. Now, I don't support it, but my government supports it. And you have lots of people out here who they'll say up and down, they'll call off terrorism. This one's horrible, terrorist, that's terrorist. They have no problem supporting this terrorist organization, no. Absolutely none. I mean, they're out there calling for it. They're like, hey, drop heads on the little babies! While they're holding up their anti-abortion signs. Drop bombs on the babies! Abortion is bad! Drop bombs on the babies! I see it for what it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to spit. It's what's going on in the world. I understand that, they don't have a lot of people don't have enough balls to call it out for what it is. I do. I'm not afraid to call it out for what it is. I'm calling it out for what it is. It's crazy. And like I said, they tried to assassinate the President of the United States multiple times. They sent multiple letter bombs. They didn't send one. They sent multiple. That means they made at least 2 attempts. But it doesn't say they made 2 attempts. It says they made multiple. So if you're going to say they made, if they made 2 or 3 attempts, you would say they made 2 attempts. They made a couple attempts. It says they made multiple attempts throughout 1947. And our government backs these people. Our government is standing with these people right now. Right now, our government is standing with the same people. Some of these people are still alive. Some of these people are still in the government. And our government is standing with them. These same people from this same terrorist organization. Lahai. Our government is standing side by side with them in total solidarity.